Hi, Danville. Alan Schultz here, Chief of Police, and we are 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better, and we do that in an effort to safeguard the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. Appreciate you joining us. I know we're a little bit late. This is a live show, and I do respect and appreciate the time that you spend with all of us. Sometimes we have to kind of finish up some of our day job stuff before we can get live and going on the show here, so I appreciate all of you hanging in there on the live side. As it is a live show, you can ask your questions right during the chat. And I'm actually looking, and I see Eric Parker tuning in saying hi to Sue. Eric, I owe you a response to one of the questions. I think it might have been on Instagram or Facebook, but I am going to give you a response to that. If you want to ask it here, you can ask it here as well, and I'll answer live during the show. But I know I've got you on my list for answering. Again, as it is a live show, go ahead and throw it anything in there, and we will work to answer it. If we don't get to it live during the show, we'll catch you later at the end, and I'll make sure to put it in the chat. We're going to cover quite a few topics. Dina Coleman had a question, and we're going to kind of cover that as a segment, and it's what do you do if you're confronted with a violent encounter? And that could be someone that's coming into your home. It could really, the advice we give is general enough to where it applies in most circumstances, and we'll go over that. The other side is we're going to cover the crime for the week. We're going to cover the traffic, and then it's going to be our second segment on e-bikes and e-scooters. If you didn't catch last week we talked about e-bikes and what the rules are. This week we're going to talk about e-scooters, and I think some of you will be surprised about the laws when it comes to e-scooters. I know I was when I first saw them when they came out. So make sure you stay tuned for that, and then we'll cover our evergreen real quick, and then we'll get to the crime. Download the all hazards checklist. This is a guide that'll help you stay safe and prepare for these events that really don't happen that often, but when they do, really, really bad events, and they're good checklists, a lot of good information in there. Also, download the Contra Costa County Residents Guide to Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation, and then make sure you opt in. This is something where if you don't opt in, you're not going to get a call. So you have to go to the sheriff's website, and you have to put your information in for the community warning system. On the All Hazards Guide or the Preparedness and Evacuation Guide, there's a lot of good detailed information in there. And then PG&E has had a site up for a while. Go check out their site as well. There is a link in the description, and there's a lot of good information on there. And the garage door will come into play when we start talking about crime. So look forward to that in the crime one. Before we get going, though, I want to make sure that we honor those that served. We've got Veterans Day coming up. We do a lot of good stuff down, and I'm saying we, I don't actually do any of it, but we as a community do a lot of really good stuff at the Veterans Memorial Building. If you have not been to the Veterans Memorial Building, I will encourage you to go down there. They put on displays and events. It is really good. And then, I think that's the draw, is to have things out for people to look at. But the real draw is actually the vets themselves and the people. And so get a chance to talk to one of the vets, see what they did in service to the country, and you'll definitely leave with a greater appreciation for the person that stands next to you. Lindsay Ortiz, our outreach coordinator, she's the one that, if you wanted the Run, Hide, Fight presentation, the abbreviated one I'm giving during the show, but if you want the expanded one, she's the person that does all that scheduling. So she actually thought, hey, what a great thing. We've got a lot of vets here at the police department, both in the volunteer and in the sworn staff. So why not honor them? So she actually made this video, and I'd like to play it for you real quick. And it's just a thank you to those that served, those that were in the military. And it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of different ranks in there, and a lot of different, I think we've got every branch covered except for the Navy and the Space Force. So let's take a look at this. Jim Gleason, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army. Vic Raziano, Staff Sergeant, United States Army Reserve. Mike Wilhelm, Sergeant, United States Army, National Guard. Adonis Dockenbaugh, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Dylan Hume, Specialist Second Class, United States Coast Guard. Alan Shields, Senior Airman, United States Air Force. Brandon Drolet, Corporal, United States Marine Corps. Chris McAvoy, Petty Officer 3rd Class, United States Coast Guard. Anthony Ramajan, Specialist, United States Army. Paul Cowell, Corporal, United States Marine Corps. Bert Feldstein, Airman 2nd Class, United States Air Force. Well, that's pretty awesome. I just love seeing different generations of people that have served, and I'll share mine with you here. I was in the Air Force. I was a senior airman. I was on board the AWACS. In fact, here's a kind of fun fact. When the recruiter said, "Do you want to fly on AWACS?" I had no idea what AWACS even was. So he had to actually explain it to me. And then I was, young, and I was like, "Sure, that sounds great." And so I was an enlisted crew member aboard the E3 AWACS, which is that plane right there that you can kind of see, and you can see the reflection there. But that was the plane I flew on, and that picture was actually taken in Norway. So it was a great opportunity for me. And when I talked to some of the other airmen and soldiers and Marines and Coasties, I talked to them, and one of the things that is the common threads are the sense of service, the sense of putting others before yourself. And then really that adventure, getting to go overseas, getting to go to visit a lot of cultures and communities and see how other people live, really has an impact. And I think it really helps to shape who we are as people, which then translates to when we're in service to the community, the diversity of a community isn't lost on us. And we understand that that is an integral part of what it is to be an American. So thank you to all that served. We appreciate your service, and to those on the outside, we really do appreciate everything you do for the country. All right, let's talk about crime, traffic. CommunityCrimeMap.com, that's your source for crime. We upload there several times a day. You can set alerts so that if crime happens in your area, you can be notified. It also has information on the sexual offender registry there as well. Crashes, 2 entries and 2 properties. So on the 31st, we had an injury collision, Saramone Valley Boulevard and Podva Road. On the 1st, we had a non-injury hit and run, and that was on the 100 block of La Cuesta Drive. On the 2nd, we had a non-injury collision on the 200 block of West El Pintado. And on the 2nd, we had an injury collision on Town and Country Boulevard and San Ramon Valley Boulevard. So you can see if you look at the map, and I'll put it back up here in a second, but most of them are on that downtown corridor. And we tend to find that it fluctuates, but anywhere from a third to a half of all of our collisions are right in that downtown, that San Ramon Valley Boulevard from, I'd say, about Sycamore up through just about the high school, El Cerro, and, a block or 2 either side of that, but kind of in that general area, that downtown corridor, we get the majority of our collisions. And then if you look out Communitas Crow, kind of that area, we'll get another big chunk, and then the rest are kind of sprinkled throughout town. So if you take a look at it, you can kind of see most of those collisions, or all of those collisions last week, were kind of in that same downtown corridor. Maybe not all on Harts Avenue, but certainly in that downtown corridor. All right, lots of crime, and then one not crime, which will be interesting. And I like to highlight those because things aren't always as they seem. So let's take a look at what crime looked like. We had 1 robbery. We had 2 burglaries, 1 commercial and 1 residential. We had 3 thefts and 1 vehicle theft. On the 30th, there was a stolen vehicle from Gardner Place. That remains outstanding. On the 30th, we also had a theft reported from a vehicle, but after our officer did some follow-up, it was actually determined that the equipment wasn't stolen. It actually fell from the vehicle, so it wasn't attached properly, and it fell from the vehicle. So that ended up being no crime. On the 31st, we had the robbery at Wells Fargo Bank on Camino Ramon, and I'll talk about that real quick. We did cover it last week, so if it's redundant, I apologize. Essentially, it was on the 30th, someone went in, demanded money for a note, and then they fled. Our officers and detectives are doing a great deal of follow-up. We have leads, and we are working to resolve and solve that case. And that was on the 31st, not the 30th. On the 31st, we also had a burglary, and that was at the 2000 block of Fostoria Circle, where items were taken from an open garage. And I'll give the crime tip on that, or the crime prevention tip on that after the slide here. On November 1st, we had a commercial burglary, and this is where people went into the Bevmo on Diablo Road with the intent to steal a bunch of alcohol, and they stole a bunch of alcohol. On the 1st, we had a theft of a license plate from a vehicle on the 500 block of San Ramon Valley Boulevard. And we've talked about this before. A lot of times these thefts of license plates aren't noticed for several days. Could have happened in town, could have happened out of town. We don't really know. Bottom line is, if you call us and you live here, we're going to take the report and we'll end up taking the theft stat on that. So there's a portion of those that we may not know where it happened, but it's important for us that we get it in the system as stolen, so that if an officer runs that plate and it's on another vehicle, it gives us an alert to go and stop that car and use a little bit of a heightened awareness when we do that. On the 3rd, we had a petty theft of property, and this was from the front yard of the 200 block of Valley Creek Lane. We did identify one of the juvenile suspects in that case, and we're working to resolve and solve that one as well. On the 5th, we had a petty theft of a cell phone, and this was from a person on Crow Canyon Road in Camino Tasajara. And we've got a suspect identified in that case as well. So we're looking to resolve that one. So on the garage, this was the open garage, and I'd be willing to bet, if we took a hand check poll in the chat, there'd probably be a fair amount of us that have left our garages open. In fact, mine was left open, 2 or 3 nights ago. And I thought, how could this be? It's my house. Well, lots of people come and go from my house, kids, my wife and I. And what I forgot to do, and what my garage door is equipped with, and I'm saying this to remind all of you, is my garage is actually equipped with a time to close. So you can set it up to where the garage will automatically close after 5, 10, or 15 minutes if it's open. And you can also set up timers on some garage doors where you say at 12 o'clock, close the garage door, regardless of the position. I choose the timer. You just have to be careful that you don't leave things in the way of the garage door that aren't hitting the sensor. For me, what our rule in the house is if you're going to leave the garage door open for a while, you just hit the hold button and the garage door will stay open. You just have to remember to close it afterwards. But so the important thing is if your garage door is equipped with a time to close feature, you might want to think about enabling that. That way, if you're, running into the house after going to the grocery store, if you take the trash out, whatever it may be, and you just forget, that garage door is going to close for you. All right, let's take a look at the arrest log. October 31st, we arrested a minor for possessing alcohol on Bordeaux Court. On the 31st, we arrested another person for DUI. That's driving under the influence, and that was on the 900 block of Lagonda Way. On the 2nd, we arrested a person for possessing drug paraphernalia. On the 4th, we arrested a person for DUI on the 400 block of Diablo Road. And then shortly after, we arrested another person for DUI right here in front of the PD at 500 block of Lagonda Way. And on the 4th, we arrested a person for a simple battery. So remember, a simple battery could be a pushing shoving match. It could be a punch, but it's usually not something that would elevate it to an aggravated battery, such as using a weapon or causing an injury like having the person go unconscious or needing some sort of major suturing. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if there's anything in there. I don't see any questions. As a reminder, if you have a question, throw it in the chat. Happy to answer it, and we'll make sure to get to it during the show, or we'll answer it during the chat. All right, we're going to talk about scooters, e-scooters. We've all seen them. I think when my kids were growing up, when they wanted to ride scooters, they were the ones where you had to kind of hold the handlebars and you took your foot, and that was the motor, was how fast could you stomp your foot on the ground like you're riding a skateboard, was how fast you could go. Well, now that there's motors on them and they're pretty affordable, and there are a lot of them, and we've been trying to push the information out because what we're seeing, and I think Sue's throwing some information in there, they're zipping in and out of traffic. And they're driving in a way that is, one, it's totally unsafe, right? If our mission is to safeguard lives, rights, and property, first one probably the most important, but all are equally important. We need to make sure that people aren't doing things that are against the law that also can harm themselves or someone else. And we know that the behavior that we're seeing, that you all are reporting to us, is something that we need to pay attention to. So what we're starting to do is we're going through the school district and we're pushing out a lot of information. And they're frankly on that end, they're taking the lead on that. They saw it as a problem, and they've been aggressively pushing information up and seeing if they can make sure that we put a stop to this. So let's take a look. First off, we need to figure out what is a motorized scooter. So the vehicle code, it's a huge book, defines all these things. Defines a motorized scooter as it's got 2 wheels, it's got handlebars and either a floorboard, or you can see some of them, they actually have that seat you can sit on. And, and, the feet stay on the floorboard. But the big thing is it's powered by an electric motor, and it goes. And some of them go really, really fast. Now, I guarantee this next slide is going to shock you, because when I first found out about this law years ago, I didn't believe it to be true. And so let's take a look at it, and I register your shock in the chat. Electric scooter laws. In order to drive an electric scooter on the roadway, that means it could be El Capitan, it could be Camino Ramon, it could be in the bike lane on Sycamore, could be downtown on Harts. If you are driving it on a highway, which is any of the roads in town, it's not 680, but if you're driving it on the road, you are not allowed to drive it unless you have a valid driver's license or a permit. You're not allowed to have passengers. You cannot ride them on sidewalks. And if you're under 18, you have to wear a helmet. So in other words, when I go to these middle schools and I see bike racks full of these electric scooters, I have to assume that most kids in the middle school are under 16 years old, under 15. So they're probably, none of them have permits, none of them have licenses. If they're operating in a parking lot or private property, that's fine. The second you take that out onto the road, not legal. You have to have a license. So I would say the most of those kids that you see zipping around, they're operating them unlawfully. The no sidewalks. So that's a vehicle code. With bicycles, the vehicle code actually leaves that up to the municipality to say whether or not you can ride a bicycle on the sidewalk or not. In Danville, we do not have an ordinance that says you cannot ride a bike on the sidewalk, so you can ride a bike on the sidewalk. What you can't do is you cannot ride or drive an electric scooter on the sidewalk, whether you have a license or not. And again, if you're under 18, you have to wear a helmet. Now, here's some other small laws when it comes to these electric scooters is you have to keep at least one hand on the handlebars. You can't carry a bunch of things that don't allow you to maintain control of it. You can't let them lie on the ground. If you think about this is really for their rentals. You can't let them lie on the ground so that they're blocking the sidewalks. And you cannot attach yourself to a car while you're riding one of these. And I think of Marty McFly in Back to the Future, where he's on the skateboard and he kind of grabs the car. That's illegal per the vehicle code. But the big one is you can't drive them on the roadway. Now, conduct on the roadway, just like we talked about e-bikes last week, and e-bikes have some different rules. But if it's an e-bike, if it's an e-scooter, and you're riding on the road, you have to follow the rules of the road as if you were a car, because you're still considered a vehicle in the road, right? So whether your bicycle has a motor or all pedal power, or you're riding one of these scooters, if you come to a stop sign and you're driving that vehicle in the road, you have to stop. If you're driving in the road, you have to drive on the right side of the road, right? You can't drive into opposing traffic. You can't drive the wrong way. Stoplights, got to stop for those. So all of those laws apply. So really, if you can, one, if you like the content, please hit the little thumbs up, the like, all that, but send this to someone that you know, because I guarantee you most people, most parents don't know that their 12, 13, 14-year-old that's zipping through town on those scooters, they're not legal to do that. Right now, we're in the education phase. How we typically do enforcement. If it is something that we have not addressed vigorously in a while, like for speeding, stop signs, the things that we know that cause accidents all the time, we're constantly churning out enforcement on that. Enforcement can be warnings, it can be warning citations, and it can be citations, right? We leave that up to the discretion of the officer, but we need them out there doing that. Something like this, where we have not pushed a bunch of information out there, we start with education. So we want to get this message out to as many people as we can, and then we're going to work on the enforcement side. And Eric, it may have been you last week that asked, what does enforcement look like? What does a ticket look like to a 12-year-old? Well, a lot of times what we do with the youngest offenders is we engage their parents right there on scene. Hey, can you pick up your child? They're not allowed to have this out there, that sort of thing. We also have the option of citing them, and we can cite them right to our juvenile diversion program. So our school resource officers can actually manage that. And so that's what it looks like for a child. Typically what we found what we have found is that we have a lot of really good parents in town. And I know we like to take edge cases and blow them up as though they're the mean, but I don't find that generally to be the case. I think when we sit down and we work with parents in this community, we usually tend to get a lot of cooperation. We have some form of an understanding, and we can move in a positive direction. And so a lot of times we found that if we just engage the parents, we can actually get a positive result. So I'm going to look at the chat real quick because it looks like some people are throwing some information in here. Carlos says e-bikes equal scooters. No, e-bikes are not scooters. So last week we talked, there's 3 classifications of e-bikes, 1, 2, and 3. E-bike classification 1 is a bike that is pedal assist. So you have to pedal and it can only go 20 miles an hour. Level 2 e-bike is you don't have to pedal and it can go 20 miles an hour throttle only. Level 3, 28 miles an hour, and it's pedal assist, and you got to wear a helmet. If you modify an e-bike outside of that, so in other words, if you alter it and now goes 40 miles an hour, it is no longer an e-bike, and it's not allowed on the road. And so I think there was a question in here. I'll take this kind of out of order. I was passed doing 45 by a teen on an e-bike, no helmet in the bike lane on Bollinger, suicidal and shocking. So that was from Charles. So Charles, if that bike is going more than 28 miles an hour, it's now been modified outside of one of the classifications of what is an e-bike, and it's not allowed on the road. That would be just the same thing as driving an electric dirt bike that goes 40 miles an hour on the road. It would be the exact same thing. All right, I'm going to check the chat here. Sue said a lot of those people on scooters are getting out of control, zipping in and out of traffic without any warning, very frightening when they don't follow the rules or the traffic lights. So zipping in and out of traffic. So if they're making abrupt lane changes, failing to signal, basically we call that an unsafe lane change in the vehicle code. Those are all violations. Those are all enforceable. Sandy Unrelated asks, do you archive these chats? And if so, where can I access them? Sandy, we will follow the law. And so we do not take down any chats. What we do is we keep them up for at least a year. That's our retention. And then what we do is we delete them after a year. You'll notice if you go to Facebook or YouTube, they're up. I think we're probably at about 18 months. So we do need to pare that back, but we do not delete any of the chats. Nancy says scooters fly up and down our street. And Nancy, I can agree with you because that's literally every street in town. We do understand the size and scope of this problem. Eric says, what grade age do schools, if at all, report simple battery among students, or is it left to the parents to report, i.e. 3rd grade boy punches 3rd grade girl in stomach versus 11th grade, et cetera? So they, many times, pushing, shoving matches at school, those will get reported to the school and they never make it to the police department. When it gets reported to the police, if a parent chooses to, they can always report it, and we will always come out and take a report. Typically, when you talk about a person's capacity to commit a crime, so battery is a specific intent crime. Like we can't be walking and I brush up against you accidentally, and that's a battery, right? I have to intentionally do the act to you. And the thought is that, I'm not a lawyer, so this can change, but the thought is it's about age 12 that a child can form criminal intent, can form the intent that what they're doing is wrong and it's against the law and they shouldn't do it, but they're going to do it anyway. And so that's part of ours is when we kind of do the calculation on it is, does the child even understand that they're breaking the law? And maybe they know it's something wrong because our parents tell us we don't push, we don't shove, we don't do those things. But it may not be from a criminal standpoint that they do, but there is no hard and fast rule on that for the school. If it's a pushing shoving match, the school's not obligated to tell us every time there's a pushing shoving match at school. Mandy says most of these e-bikes are pedal assist though. Mandy, most are, but we're seeing quite a few that aren't. There's quite a few just, and I'm not disparaging the brand. It's a very good e-bike, but it's called the Saran, very popular. It's a 2-wheel e-bike, all throttle, and they limit it to 20 miles an hour. Sue, Sue, and then I think Eric kind of echoes, maybe the police department should send a message to the schools and have the schools inform the students. Then Eric says SRV USD should educate parents. Funny if you say that, if you check out Diablo Vista Middle School's Facebook page, we actually did an interview. I did an interview with the principal, Jeff, and we were out there and we kind of went over exactly that, the different classes of e-bikes, the scooters, the laws pertaining to them, and they're really pushing the information out. And so I would look forward over the next week or two. They're going to be really ratcheting up. They're going to send a lot of videos. If you look at our Facebook page and our Instagram, we've been putting out a lot of Tip Tuesdays, have been centered on exactly this. And they're going to share our Tip Tuesdays, and they're going to echo that as well. And Cindy says, can the SRV school district send out emails to all parents informing them of their restrictions? I'm pretty sure they're going to do emails. I'll check with Alana. She's the PIO in the All Things District, as far as I'm concerned. And and Cindy, I have to admit, if I don't write it down, I'll forget. District email. I know this doesn't help the flow of the show, but it helps my memory. So thank you for being patient. You just saw what a slow person's brain looks like. So I appreciate the patience there. And then Eric says, saw a guy in Sunnyvale on a modified one wheel going at least 40, wearing sports bike helmet, zooming through traffic, future organ donor. Yeah, Eric, I used to race motorcycles in club racing. I wasn't any good at all, but I really did enjoy it. But at some point I realized going, 100 plus miles an hour, even on a track, isn't not all that safe for the bones and stuff. So yeah, at some point we have to make decisions in our own best interest. And then Sue points out and this is the thing that I think kids don't realize. I know parents, we would realize it, but kids don't. And she says the frightening part is when they zip in and out of the streets, it's tough to see them when it's dark out. And that's absolutely right. And that's a frightening thing. And I've gotten several emails and comments from parents where they're telling me how frightening it is that they almost just hit a child. And that's in the daylight. And so in the dark, it's even worse. And with it getting dark, I mean, it's really dark out right now. That's pretty scary. So Sue, that's a great observation from a different perspective. And we hope that perspective is being passed on to the kids. All right. I'm going to get to this audience question. This was from Dina Coleman. It was a great question, and I wanted to make sure that we kind of covered it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a part of a presentation that we give on active threat response. We use the run, hide, fight model, and I say that we use it because it's super easy to remember. When my middle child, he's now 17, when he was 12 years old, I told him, I gave him what you would give a 12-year-old for this, not the one you'd give an adult, but I gave it to him. And I said, hey, just remember, run if you can, get away from any kind of danger, hide if you can't run. And if you have to, you're going to have to fight. And the next year I'm dropping him off to school. First day, I'm like, hey, do you remember that thing I told you last year? Like if something really bad happens, what do you do? And, as kids do in the backseat, he's like, do you mean that run, hide, fight, Dad? I'm like, yeah. So if my then 12-year-old can remember what to do in a crisis, I think that's a good method to use, because when bad things start to happen, you can't really start to do these complex calculations in your head. It needs to be very quick and swift objectives, and it needs to be gross motor movements and all that. But let's get to the question. All right. Dina had asked, what do you do if someone breaks into your house, in your home? Should we try to run? Should we try to fight back? If we have mace or a baseball bat, should we try to reason? And if so, until what point? If they start to get violent, then do we fight back? Should we hide? Should we call 911 or text someone to call 911 in case we can't finish the call or are trying to be quiet about it? All great questions. And I think a lot of those questions come out because it is relatively safe. And day to day, I'm probably the only one that really thinks about this stuff day to day. I go to church, I sit in church, and I think, okay, if something really bad happens, what's my responsibility here? What do I tell my kids what to do? And what am I going to do that might be different than what someone else might do? And so it's not something we think about all the time. And frankly, we shouldn't think about it all the time. So the message I'll give before we kind of kick this block off, and I'm going to give you the real watered down version. We're not going to go deep. If you want it deep and you have a community group, if you have a neighbor group, if you have anybody that you want You can call or email us. Lindsay Ortiz usually does all the scheduling on it, but we'll come out and we'll give you a run, hide, fight, or avoid, deny, defend presentation. Tonight, I'm going to get it really quick and keep it really short. So again, we teach run, hide, fight, but a good way to think about it when learning it for the first time is avoid, deny, defend. The reason I like using avoid, deny, defend, and I'll give the kudos to Ben Aldrich, the chief over at Lafayette. He's the one that turned me on to that, is run only starts at the moment of impact. Someone's at your back door, right? Avoid identifies that maybe there's things we can do ahead of something happening that can be very helpful should we have this encounter. And so what I'd say is, if we're focusing on our home, do I have motion lights outside? Do I have an alarm system? Do I have cameras? We have a dog. We have an Australian Shepherd, nicest, most lovable dog. But if someone comes up to the front door, he does the "I'm super scared" bark, right? That's like a little alarm system for us. So we know, oh, the Amazon person's here or whatever. And so we have like an early warning system kind of built in throughout our house. That's why we like avoid, deny, defend as a way of learning it. But to keep it up here, it's run, hide, fight. All right. So let's talk about avoid. What does avoid look like? And this is the running stage. So in your home, whatever room you're in, you should have an idea of, if I need to get out for any reason, if there's a fire, if there's someone coming in the front door, whatever it may be, how do I get out? And do I have a secondary evacuation route? When you're doing the run, when you're avoiding a confrontation, this isn't the time to pack bags, take purses, any of that. Get out. And then if you can, you want to help others. And I realize if this is your home, if it's my home, I'm the last one out. All my kids are going to get out. My wife's going to get out, and then I will get out. And so I understand that it may be different. If you're in your workplace, though, or you're at the mall or you're downtown, you can't possibly help every single person that you come across. It's important that you get out and you encourage others to do the same. If someone is wounded, and this is because this is generalized advice. So if you're in an area and there's already people that are wounded, don't attempt to move them. You have to just keep going. And that's even the advice we give our officers as well. So deny. So this is the hide. So if you can't run, hide. And this is where you want to stay out of the person's way, lock and block doorways, turn off any lights, silence your phone, remain quiet, anything you can to let them know that they're not, that you're not there. And really you want to do your best. And then while you're doing that, so if you're maybe in a bathroom, or you're maybe in the kitchen, or you're in your bedroom, or you're out at a mall and you're in a store, wherever you may be, the next thing you want to do is plan how, if I have to, how am I going to defend myself? And you want to have it in your mind that you're going to win. So you're going to act aggressively. You can throw objects, you can find objects if they're, fire extinguishers, whatever it may be. At that point, when you're in the fight, you're yelling, you're screaming, and this is not the time to fight fair. This is not Marcus of Queensberry's rules, right? This is not all above the waist stuff. This is you're fighting to win, to make sure that you are going to survive. Now, how do you implement that? It's not a ladder. It's not run. Okay, let's try to run. Okay, now that doesn't work, so hide. Let's try hiding. Okay, that didn't work, so let's try fighting. It's going to be situation dependent. So think of these as 3 ideas, 3 tools that you keep on your belt, and you use the most appropriate one given the circumstances. And the circumstances are going to be different for everyone, for every home, for every location, right? So Dina, the person that asked this question, she may be sitting in her home, have something happen. I could sit in my home, same thing happen, but Dina and I come from different experiences, right? Dina may have a martial arts background. She may study defensive weapons. She may have all these things that allow her to be a little bit more relaxed maybe than I am. And so she's going to react or move to one of those tools at a different rate or speed than I am. And what is important to know is, what is it that you're competent or good at? And we don't make recommendations for certain defensive tools or any of that. It's really going to be up to the individual. The only thing that we do say is, if you're going to do something, Dina recommended the baseball bat. Know where it's at, know how to use it, know how not to use it improperly so that you hurt someone in your own family. So we just say, just really know what it is that you're doing. Dina had another question about 911. How do you call? Do you text? What do you do? Our recommendation is as soon as it is practical, call 911. Don't assume that your neighbor's already called. Don't assume that someone downstairs in your home has already called. Don't assume any of that. Call all the time. And the dispatchers, and this is the criticism that our dispatchers get all the time, and they get it because they're phenomenal, but they're going to cut you off. They're going to say, stop talking, and they're going to redirect you to ask a question because they need very specific information. So they will get the information that the officers need so they can safely and properly respond. We've had it where sometimes people ramble on about a certain portion of an event, but they're not giving us the details we need. Do we respond with 2 officers or do we need 10? What are we actually going into? And so we will, our dispatchers are very highly trained, very professional, very good, but just expect them to be a little bit curt and assertive on the phone so that they can get the information they need so that we can respond properly. When law enforcement arrives, make sure you follow their instructions, drop any objects, and keep your hands visible. Make sure that because if we're coming to your house, unless we've met you before, we're not going to know who's who in the house. So we just want to make everything safe. We want to isolate that situation. We want to calm everything down, and we want to start identifying what happened and work on the life safety side of things. And let me do this. If you have, and I should have asked this at the beginning, but if you have a tip that you do that makes you or provides you a little more comfort in your home, could be an alarm, could be, I know for me, our alarm panel, because it's wireless, I keep it in our bedroom. So I'm most concerned at night. So I know that I get an alert at night. Since I'm the dad and I'm the one that gets to pop up out of bed and address any noises that are heard. That's kind of the funny joke in our house. My wife will wake up and say, "Did you hear something in the driveway?" And of course I understand she's not actually asking if I heard it. She's saying, "Go check it." So it's a question that's not really a question, right? So let me know what you do to make yourself feel more comfortable in the house. For me, I like having the lights out front, the cameras, and I like having our dog. That's a side benefit. Great dog, but he's a great early warning. There was one part that Dina asked, and she said, "Well, should I call or should I text?" And our recommendation is we want you to call because we're going to be able to get more and better information quicker. And when you call, we want you to call 911, not the non-emergency number. But if you can't call, throw a text in there. And all you do, and let me put the picture back up. If you look in the see if I can zoom that in. If you look, what you do is in the to line, you just put the number 911. And then in the subject box, put what's happening. And if you look, the most important thing is, where do you want us to go? 123 East Main Street, Anytown. The second, what is happening? Someone is breaking in downstairs. And our dispatchers will be able to two-way chat with you. But our recommendation on the call side is if you're calling, we really want you to call 911. What that does is that allows us to query your phone. So if you're unable to talk, we can at least get a precise location for that phone. And our officers can go to that area and see if there is something they need to be looking for. All right, let me see if we've got some questions here. So Laurel, Laurel, that's great. Yeah, so we actually went out to Laurel's work. And so this will show you, we'll go out to businesses, we'll go out to schools, we'll go out. I've been in homes literally where there's 6 neighbors in the home because that's the size of their court. So we're more than happy to go for 6 neighbors or 300. Laurel says it's a great program, and she's talking about the run, hide, fight the PD does on the run, hide, fight. And so a lot of it is understanding what our current environment is. My house was built in the 70s. It's built the way it's built. I can add on, I can do things, but there's only so much of a budget and so much my homeowners association will probably let me do. I'm pretty sure they're not going to let me put 12-foot walls around my house and build it like Fort Knox, right? So it's understanding what our environment is. Lou says dogs are the best. Lou, I don't know who wouldn't love dogs, and they do work great. Whistles and alarms work well too, says Sue. Mike Marshall says it's a good idea to keep your alarm set even when you're home. Mike, that's a good point. I don't know if I'm supposed to admit this stuff, but I'll admit I don't do that. We set it when we leave and go somewhere and there's no one home. But especially when you settle in for the night, set the alarm. The side benefit is if your kids are trying to sneak out of the house, maybe you might catch one. I don't know. But it's definitely an early intervention on whether or not someone's coming into your home. So normally if a door opens, you might have it set to where it goes bloop, bloop, and it lets you know a door's open. Well, that may not wake you up. The alarm sounding off, that's certainly going to wake you up. So Mike, very, very good idea. Eric says, my daughter accidentally held her Apple Watch side button for 5 seconds a couple weeks ago. It quietly called 911. Cocoa Sheriff was at our door in less than 3 minutes. Well, that's a pretty awesome response time, right? Like Sheriff is just really knocking that one out of the park. So a funny story, Lafayette had a gas leak the other day. And so I went up there to help out. Really, I didn't do anything. The team there had it completely done up and taken care of. But my watch, my wrist was flat. And so I was hitting that same side button and it called our dispatch center. And so our dispatchers picked up. So I was quite embarrassed. And then Lou, oh yeah, great comment, Lou. Everyone should visit the dispatch center. And the dispatch center that Lou's talking about is our Contra Costa Sheriff's Dispatch Center. It's up in Martinez. And you get to see how big or small, depending on what your perception of it is. But you get to see how big it is, how the dispatchers work on calls together, and how they, 1 minute they're dealing with a pursuit or a very chaotic event involving an officer. And the next minute it's the barking dog. It's my neighbor is, yelling at me, whatever that call is. And their emotions have to go up and down and up and down. And it can be pretty challenging. Sue says, I like knowing you live close by. Sue, I guess that's the good thing about living in our neighborhood is the chief is pretty close. Oh, Diane, wow, I haven't seen you in a while. Diane says it was a great experience. I'm assuming she's talking about the dispatch center. So, Diane, great to see you. Say hi to your husband too. We miss you down here. And Sue missed the dispatch. So there was a period during the COVID years where in an effort to make sure our staff was coming to work all the time, we didn't want to overexpose them to potential hazards. So we did not do the dispatch tour. And so Sue missed that. So Sue, we'll have to get you jump in on another one. So I'll write that down. Because I actually just started this last class. In fact, it just started a minute ago upstairs. This is our last class for our Fall Citizens Academy for 2023, and they're up there right now. And in fact, I'm going to go join them. But that is the first class that we've been able to jump into the dispatch center. All right. As always, download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide. Opt in for the Community Warning System. Go to the PG&E website. Lots of good information there. Download the FEMA All Hazards Guide. Links to all of that is in the description below. And if it looks like I've gotten to all the questions, if you have questions, you can always email them. Dina, I apologize. She had to send me a reminder. Failure on my part. But thanks for sending me that reminder because I think that was a good topic on covering the active threat training. All right. I'm going to play that video again. So if you didn't see it, if you're late in or you just want to see it again because it's a bunch of cool veterans, I'll play it. There won't be a voiceover on this one, but let's give our kudos to our veterans. And if you have a veteran that you want to give some acknowledgement to, go ahead and throw their name in the chat and just, if you have their name, that's the minimum. But if you know what branch they're in, that would be good so that we can honor them on this edition of 10-8 as well. So thank you to all the veterans. We appreciate your service to the country. Thank you.